My husband, 31 male, cheated on me, 30 female, while I was pregnant. We reconciled and he's making real changes. But I later experienced a stillbirth, and part of me blames the emotional stress caused by the affair. He's present and remorseful, but I'm numb. I don't know if staying is healing or holding me back. Is reconciliation still worth it? Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because tomorrow's video is quite interesting. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. When I found out I was pregnant with our second child, I cried in the bathroom, not out of fear or regret, but from an overwhelming wave of joy I hadn't expected. Ethan and I weren't perfect, but we'd built a life that, on most days, felt real and stable. We had a 3-year-old son who adored his dad. We had Sunday pancakes, inside jokes, and a small whiteboard on the fridge that we used to leave notes for each other. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was ours. And I truly believed it was enough. Pregnancy was easier this time, physically at least. Emotionally, I felt more alone. Ethan had been working long hours, and though I understood the demands of his job in tech management, something in me started to ache every time he'd come home exhausted and distracted. I'd mention doctor's appointments or little milestones, like how our son had started drawing his first recognizable stick figures, and Ethan would nod and say, "That's great," before disappearing into his phone or onto his laptop. I started to feel like a single parent in a 2-parent household. But I didn't complain. Not much anyway. When I did bring it up, he'd sigh and say, "You don't understand the pressure I'm under right now." So I swallowed my feelings, told myself it was just a phase, and turned my energy toward the baby growing inside me. Until one night I couldn't swallow it anymore. It started with a gut feeling, a strange, creeping suspicion. Ethan had been more distant than usual, disappearing into work calls that didn't sound like work. He began guarding his phone like it contained nuclear codes. The intimacy between us had eroded into polite exchanges and dry routines. And though I felt guilty for snooping, I looked. I waited until he fell asleep and I opened his phone. What I found wasn't a single message. It was an entire world. Dozens of texts with someone named Clara. Sweet nothings, late-night conversations, pictures, plans. My heart slowed. It was surreal, like watching a car crash happen in front of you, but through thick glass, and all you can hear is the sound of your own breathing. The messages had been going on for months. 5, maybe 6. Long enough for jokes to form, nicknames to stick, feelings to deepen. There were even references to me, brief, callous mentions that stung like acid. Things like, "She's always on my case," or "She doesn't get me like you do." I didn't confront him that night. I sat on the bathroom floor until dawn, clutching my belly and feeling like a stranger in my own life. I watched the sun rise while the man who promised to love me slept just a few feet away. The next evening, I told him I knew. I said it calmly, too calmly, as if I were reading a grocery list. Ethan looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Then, slowly, he sat down and admitted everything. He said he hadn't meant to cheat, that it had started as a conversation, someone who listened when he felt invisible, someone who didn't make him feel like a failure. He told me he'd been struggling with how much more I earned than him, how I always seemed in control while he felt small and inadequate. He said he found validation with Clara, that dreaded word. Not love, not lust, validation. As if I had failed some unspoken emotional metric, and this woman, with her soft attention and laughter at all the right moments, had given him the gold star he needed to feel like a man again. I remember laughing. Not out of humor, but from the sheer absurdity of it. Here I was, growing our second child inside me, exhausted and hormonal, managing a career, our household, and a toddler. And he wanted a trophy for showing up? We separated a few days later. He packed a bag and left, and I told our son that Daddy had to go on a work trip for a while. I couldn't bring myself to break his heart with the truth just yet. I spent the next few weeks floating through life. I kept working, parenting, doctor's appointments, but nothing felt real. The house echoed too much. My belly grew, but the excitement didn't return. Everything was gray. What haunted me the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the timing. The fact that he could stray while I was carrying his child. That in the most vulnerable state of my life, he chose someone else. He called sometimes, left long texts, apologies, breakdowns, desperate explanations. He cut off contact with Clara, resigned from his job, said he wanted to come back, said he'd do therapy. Said he finally understood what he risked, what he destroyed. I didn't say yes right away. Part of me wanted to. Not because I forgave him, but because I wanted to believe that people could change, that pain could be transformed, that we could still be a family. But another part of me, the deeper, colder part, didn't believe in fairy tale endings anymore. That part of me just wanted to feel again, wanted to scream, wanted to rewind time and scream at my past self. He is not who you think he is. Still, after 2 months, I let him back in. Not fully. Not into my heart, but into the house. Our son cried happy tears when he saw his dad again. That night I heard him whisper, "Daddy came home," as he fell asleep in Ethan's arms, and for a moment, I felt something close to hope. Ethan was different. Or maybe just desperate. He worked from home now. He made breakfast. He volunteered for daycare drop-offs. He started individual therapy. He left notes again, like he used to, small affirmations on the fridge. He told me he knew trust would take years, maybe forever, and he was willing to earn every inch of it. And still, I couldn't feel safe. Not really. I watched him like a hawk, even though he gave me no reason to doubt. I flinched when his phone buzzed. I studied his face when he spoke, searching for lies that maybe weren't even there. Then came the ultrasound. At 33 weeks, the doctor looked at the screen too long. Her face tightened. She turned to me gently and said, "I'm sorry. There's no heartbeat." The room went silent. I don't remember the drive home. I don't remember the nurse's name or the way Ethan held my hand. I just remember lying in bed that night with a hollow womb and a shattered spirit, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is what it feels like to lose everything at once. The doctor said there was no medical explanation. Everything had been progressing normally, but one soft-spoken OB mentioned that emotional stress could contribute to complications. She didn't say it was my fault, but I heard it that way. For days, I couldn't look at Ethan. I blamed him silently. If he hadn't done what he did, if I hadn't spent nights crying, anxious, on edge, if I had been calm, centered, joyful, maybe, just maybe, my baby would still be here. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in through the cracks, a slow drowning. And when betrayal and grief meet, they tangle into something unrecognizable. A sadness so sharp it becomes quiet. Ethan stayed. He cooked. He held me when I let him. He never rushed me. He never asked for forgiveness. But sometimes I catch him looking at me like he's wondering if the version of me he broke will ever return. I don't know how to tell him she won't. I'm someone else now. Someone quieter, more distant. Not colder, just tired. There are nights I lie beside him and remember Clara's name more vividly than my own. I wonder if he thinks of her too. If I'm still the consolation prize for a man who only came back when it all fell apart. But the scariest part? There are also nights I remember the love. The way he once looked at me. The way he holds our son now. The softness in his voice when he reads bedtime stories. And I ask myself, is this what redemption looks like? Or is it just guilt dressed up as effort? I don't have the answers. All I know is that something broke. In him, in me, in us. And while the pieces are still scattered across our lives, I can't help but wonder if some things, once shattered, were never meant to be put back together. Grief doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't follow a schedule or warn you when it's about to pull the rug out from under your feet. One moment, you're folding baby clothes with a distant kind of peace. The next, you're curled up on the bathroom floor, clutching a onesie you'll never use, trying to remember how to breathe. That was my life after we lost the baby, a cycle of small joys crushed under heavy silence. I was no longer pregnant, but I still felt like a vessel. Empty. Echoing. Still trying to remember how to exist in a body that had once been full of life and promise. Still pretending to be whole when everything inside me had been scattered to the wind. And Ethan was there. Every morning, he made coffee without asking how I wanted it, but always getting it right. He made our son's school lunches with heart-shaped notes tucked inside. He moved through the house quietly, like someone afraid to wake a sleeping giant. Sometimes I caught him staring at the nursery we never finished, his eyes glassy, hands shoved in his pockets as if he didn't know what to do with the weight of his own guilt. He never talked about the baby. Neither did I. At first, I appreciated the silence. It felt like a small mercy, not having to relive it every day. But eventually, the quiet began to feel like a wall between us. A barrier neither of us dared to climb because we both knew that on the other side of it was the ugly truth. That we were mourning very different things. I was grieving a baby, and I was grieving the man who once made me feel safe. Ethan was grieving, too, but his grief was braided with shame. He was mourning his mistakes, his choices, and the ripple effects that followed. And sometimes I hated him for it. Not just for what he did, but for the fact that he still got to stand beside me and call himself my husband, for the fact that he still had a future, while mine felt suspended in a slow-motion heartbreak. Some nights I'd lie awake and watch him breathe. I'd try to remember what it felt like to love him without caution. I'd wonder if those 5 months with Clara were full of laughter and softness. If he smiled with her the way he used to smile with me. If he held her the same way he used to hold me when I was scared or sick or just needing to be seen. But mostly, I'd lie there in silence, pretending that being beside him didn't feel like sleeping next to a ghost. A version of Ethan I used to know but no longer recognized. We went back to therapy. Not consistently, but often enough. On good days, we talked about triggers, boundaries, trust building. On bad days, I sat in the car outside the therapist's office for 10 minutes before walking in, trying to talk myself out of driving away. Our therapist, a calm woman named Lynn with wise eyes and a velvet voice, once asked me what I needed to feel safe again. I didn't know how to answer. Because how do you ask someone not to become a person they've already proven capable of being? How do you say, I need you to never, ever look at another woman the way you looked at her when they already did? How do you say, I need you to understand that forgiveness doesn't come with a deadline without sounding cruel? What I really wanted to say was, I need to believe in us again, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I should. After the stillbirth, people tiptoed around us. Friends texted but rarely called. My mother brought food and stayed only long enough to ask if I needed help with the laundry. Everyone meant well, but grief makes people uncomfortable, and betrayal makes them unsure of whose side to stand on. So I stopped talking to most people. I shrank into my little world. Just me, my son, and a man trying to fix what he broke with hands that still trembled from the impact. And despite everything, there were moments that nearly broke me open in a different way. Moments that made me believe for a split second that healing might be possible. Like the night I found Ethan kneeling in the nursery, surrounded by folded baby clothes we'd packed away, tears streaming silently down his face. Or the time he built our son a treehouse in the backyard with his bare hands, determined to create something tangible, something real, something lasting. Or the quiet moment at the kitchen sink when he gently wiped a tear off my cheek without saying a word, just placed a hand on the back of my head and held me close. In those moments, I saw something like redemption. Not full forgiveness, not closure, but a glimpse of a man who was trying, really trying, to become someone better than the man who left me for validation and attention while I was carrying his child. But the truth? Trying doesn't always mean succeeding, because effort doesn't erase the memory of whispering Clara's name in my sleep. Effort doesn't stop the images that flash through my mind when he's late coming home. Effort doesn't rebuild trust like a house of cards. Not when the foundation cracked so loudly it echoed through my womb and left me holding nothing but air and unspoken blame. One afternoon, I sat across from Ethan at the dining table, watching our son draw with crayons. The sun streamed through the window in lazy, golden slants. Ethan looked up at me and smiled, the kind of smile that tries to say, I'm here. I'm better now. Don't give up on me. I wanted to smile back. I wanted to reach across the table and touch his hand, but instead, I said the thing I hadn't dared to say aloud. I don't know if I love you anymore. The words dropped into the air like stones, heavy, final, but not angry. He blinked, swallowed, then nodded. I know. He whispered. I think about that every day. There was no fight, no defensiveness, just a kind of mutual grief for something that might be dying quietly between us. That was the moment I realized that staying isn't always the opposite of leaving. Sometimes staying is just a slower kind of goodbye. A long, drawn-out ache. A hope. You keep checking for a pulse, even though you already know it flatlined long ago. And yet I stay. Not because I'm weak, not because I've forgiven him, but because I still haven't decided what version of myself I want to become after all this. Because part of me wants to believe that people can change, that the man who hurt me so deeply can also be the man who helps me heal. And part of me is just afraid. Afraid that if I leave, I'll carry this grief into the next chapter too. Afraid that no one will ever understand this version of me. The one who's lost both a child and a sense of self. Afraid that walking away means admitting that love wasn't enough. So here I am, living in a house half rebuilt, sharing space with a man who both broke me and is trying to build me back up. Some days we laugh. We dance in the kitchen. We kiss, and it feels almost normal. Other days, I sit in the shower and let the water drown out the sound of my sobs, wondering what kind of life I'd be living if things had gone differently. And always, I'm waiting. not for him to mess up again, but for the moment when I finally decide, do I stay and rebuild, or do I walk away, not because I want to punish him, but because I finally choose myself? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for more of these stories. We have also handpicked 2 more stories that we believe you will enjoy watching.